Let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. 866-594-4150. What has caught your attention in the automotive world?
Well, it is hard not to pay attention to the political landscape and how it affects the auto industry.
Tariffs.
Right now there's a lot of posturing going on. I know we've talked about it off air. Russ and I have, with him managing the service center, just looking what's happening with parts. And you see current predictions were that if certain tariffs went in place as talked about, which they were heading that direction last I looked, that there could be potentially $3,000 to $5,000 price addition onto new vehicles, depending on where they're produced. Mm-hmm. Now, just recently, as we're producing the show, there's an exception or a little bit of a stay given to the vehicle industry for a period of time. It looks like maybe a month or something like that. But it is going to definitely shake up the industry again. I don't know if it's going to be a COVID-like shakeup,
right?
But it is, because in that case there was things that just simply weren't available,
right?
But it is going to definitely be something to be monitoring for anybody that's in the market for a vehicle. Might be the time to buy now, before, depending on what the dealers do with what they have on their lots already. It could be that if you've got a repair scheduled and you better lock in getting those parts bought. If something's going to change, because it looks like there's a lot of the manufacturers that lay on the borders of either end of our country that are very adversely affected. It's a lot of the suppliers. Mm-hmm. Even though the auto industry itself might get a little bit of a breathing room, a lot of those suppliers aren't getting any breathing room.
Yeah.
And so it's going to definitely be a challenge. So definitely something to pay attention to and see how it shakes out for our listeners. That's our main thing when we sit down here every week is, what can we do to help our hoodies, as I've often said when interviewed or talked to, be better consumers of their automobile products and understand it better and
keep them from breaking down?
Yep.
See what we can do to help maintain them?
Yep.
When they do break down, provide them options and alternatives. Where can I go? Do I have to buy a new car, or is there something I can do with mine? Is it savable? Is it even worth saving? Lots of stuff.
Yeah, and that's what we've been doing for 30 plus years, and there's no tariffs put on our voices, I don't think, so we should be able to talk freely.
As long as we keep doing it from right here in the USA.
Yeah, no, but our we just get a lot of people that will send a message after hearing the podcast, or they've heard us on a radio station, one of the almost 250 affiliates across the country, or now they're watching our different streams as Russ and you have been working your butts off trying to figure out
YouTube, Instagram.
Figure out our streams, because that's
Facebook.
Been getting that all straightened so we can multi-stream out of here.
Let me get this clear. It was me pushing the buttons, but it was Chris that forced me to do it. He's like, come on, can't we do this? Can't we get it done? Can't we get it done? And we got it done. Because
see, that's my niche. I'm the idea man.
He's the pest.
Yes. That is
Chris the pest.
I just want him to stop sending me texts at midnight. Hey, can we get this going?
He doesn't send them at midnight. He's sleeping.
No, yeah. 2 a.m. 2:15.
Scheduled text, right?
Can you schedule text?
Oh, no.
Oh.
So what is the latest you've ever sent a non-urgent, non-emergency, or at least we thought it was non-urgent, non-emergency when we read it, text to one of us two that you remember?
What do you mean? Like what?
What's the latest at night? Because I don't buy this midnight stuff.
I've only got them from Chris. I would say like after 7:30, 7:45 p.m. when it is prefaced by, "Hey, this isn't important.
Don't need to read this right now.
Don't even need it right now."
So how in the heck am I not supposed to read
I'm out
that?
of town at a doctor's appointment, and I'm up late. Or this is another one of my multiple late nights because I'm out doing a concert thing, and boom, and I get those. But other than that,
what's the latest you think, Chris?
I generally try to turn my phone off, like just not put it away by 6 or 7 every night. So it's rare that I send a text.
What's the earliest in the morning they've started?
Oh, 1:30, 2. Yeah.
So does that count? That doesn't count as the night then.
Sometimes Chris will say, "Oh,
Not
you're
to
awake."
me, I don't think. Yeah.
When I respond at 4 a.m.
And I try not to, because some people, I don't understand. The people who, I've had people where I text them and they're like, "Oh yeah, that woke me up," and that is just so
Then why
not.
is your phone on?
That's so not my thing. I
But
turn it
yours
off.
would, because
and
you're in my important contacts.
Oh yeah. But I would never. If you could text me 1,000 times overnight, and I'll never know, because I turn it off at 6 or 7, and then don't come back to it until I get up at 2:30 or 2:15. So, but yeah,
Hey,
I don't.
If they can figure out a way to make a phone blow up when it rings, they can find a way to make your phone ring while you're sleeping.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Although I didn't get my wife was listening to a book on tape on her phone when the interstate closed.
Tape?
Or whatever. Yeah. And she got the alert. It sent the alert sound in her headphones. And so she, whereas mine didn't go off. I had mine off.
That'd be great. We want to send Chris a text. We'll just figure out a way to get that emergency alert tone to go to his phone only.
We have in our little, before we go to the caller here, on our family string, our son is notoriously absent from the family string a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And so now,
I have a brother. Yeah.
So now when middle daughter wants to get his attention, the text is alert Riley, and she's got danger signs on both sides of it. Respond to this.
Yeah, I have a brother who will log on and go, "Oh, hey, I had 114 texts. I don't know what should I, can someone recap it for me?" He'd be a perfect candidate for AI assistant, because when me and my brothers get going, especially on like a weekend when there's a game on, we might have 100. If you miss a day, you're going to miss hundreds of texts of miss it, wide right.
Just that kind of stuff.
He clearly was inbounds. Yeah, just that stuff over and over. And it's a long conversation.
Well, good.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the End of the Hood Show.
The fact that we were talking earlier about just what could happen in the auto industry does not preclude the fact that you need to be smart about your repairs. And that's something we definitely want to talk about on the show every day. Russ has people come into the shop often, and we're still having to pose back and forth the questions with them. Is this worth fixing?
Right.
That question comes up at our business where we buy people's vehicles. We buy not only late model insurance salvage, we buy people's vehicles off the street that they're kind of done with. And so we have both options because we have a self-service yard and we have our full service facility and everything in between. And so we're constantly getting those questions posed to us. I just don't want to fix this, or I don't feel like I should fix it. Or, like Sandy, when she got a hold of us on the show, that was a wonderful call with 90-year-old Sandy, wondering whether or not that she should spend some money on her 09 Infiniti, or she should lease a different car, or what she should do. And it's fun to help people talk through those things sometimes, if you can give them some different ideas. We'll talk more about that.
Let's go to Alabama and talk to Dan. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Dan, what can we do for you?
Hey, thanks for helping me out. Thanks for taking my call, guys.
You bet.
All right. So I have a 2012 Chevrolet Avalanche, and I tow a camper about 2,000 to 3,000 miles a year. My old camper was 22 feet and 4,500 pounds. The Avalanche didn't come with the factory tow package, but I added trailer brake control, external transmission cooler. I changed the radiator to the one with the engine oil cooler. And the only thing I didn't do that I can tell is change the gears from 308 to the 410. So I just bought a bigger camper. Now I'm up to like about 5,200 dry. It's hard to tell. It's between 5,200 and 5,500 dry, 26 feet long. So my question is, two questions. Would you guys recommend changing the gearing, possibly adding heavy duty coil springs, airbags, or go to 2,500 truck? I see they made the Suburban in 2009, 2500, and I was wondering, is the frame different or is it just the suspension?
Well, you got a bunch of good questions there, Dan, and I thank you for knowing the dry weight of your camper.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people we talk to, they have this camper and they have no idea what it weighs. They just know how long it is and that they like to use it. And so we've encouraged a lot of people to go hit the scale at the truck stop and actually find out what your camper weighs. And more importantly, what it weighs when you take off for camping.
Right.
I mean, it's nice to know the dry weight, but what actually does it weigh when you're loaded for the campground and taken off? And so it sounds like if you're in that range of 5,000 pounds, from what I remember on most Avalanches, even if they didn't have the towing package, their towing capacity was 6,000 to 7,500 pounds, depending on the option package that they had. And so, you know, we always talk about an 80% rule. Find out your exact vehicles. Do you know since you know the weight of your camper, have you ever run the stats on your exact vehicle to see what the factory tow rating was?
Yeah, I know exactly. So the factory Avalanche with the tow package is about 8,000 pounds. Mine that didn't come is 5,100. Of course, I've made all the upgrades except for the gearing, which I could change the gears. So, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, you're right at your limit, but I do like the things that you've done. And did you say you just tow occasionally?
Well, I tow it for work, so I'll tow it around maybe 600 miles, set it up, and I'm there for 3 months, and then 600 miles back home after the three months like that. So I'm not like constantly driving it.
You know, I'm
every weekend.
I know you're right on the edge of where you should be, but in the same token, you could spend a ton of money trying to upgrade and do all that work for what to me is a very short season of towing.
Right.
And I know people in the same situation. I know one person that they will actually borrow a friend's truck for that tow when they have to do it and not spend the money. They make a deal with their buddy that's got a heavier truck since they're not towing it all the time. I've also got another friend that has this similar situation, and they will just tow it very, very slowly, and they keep it in a good drive gear. They just purposely try to tow in a way that isn't going to overload, the transmission and overload the suspension, and they're just going to take it easy. They don't try to over tow. But at the end of the day, you still have the same braking capacity. And so that's one of the bigger challenges for people is, can you stop if you need to? We'll pick this back up after the break here, because I think I got a little more to offer you as far as that comparison to the Suburban and the 8-lug heavy-duty stuff.
866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. Okay, let's go back to Dan in Alabama. He's got a 2012 Avalanche he's looking to tow with, and we were talking about the weight that he's towing.
Right, and he's the new camper that he got. He's right at the tow limit, so he's over the tow limit already. He has done some upgrades. I like the external transmission cooler to keep that transmission cool. I like the fact that you've done those things that you've done already, but the realization is that you don't have the braking capacity that it's designed for. Will it stop, and can you stop 100%? You'll be able to, but in emergency braking, you've got more weight behind you than what the engineer said you should have. Mm-hmm. The spring system that they have on that is like a Suburban, and if it doesn't have the tow package on it, they just did some different things. But the biggest thing you are missing is that gear ratio. And I don't know that I would invest the money for that one tow a year that you're doing. I think that
either way.
Yeah, I just think that sounds like an investment I wouldn't make. Because if you try to, is this a 4-wheel drive truck or a 2-wheel drive?
It's a 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, because you got to start changing the rear and the front carrier. You're going to spend some pretty good money to make those two match and get that other gear ratio in there. And then you'll have to do some programming on the computer after that. I would just, either be very careful towing what you have, realizing that you're at the limit, or I would consider upgrading your vehicle to a heavier tow vehicle at some point. You brought up the Suburbans with the 2500s. They are the same body.
Yeah.
They have a heavier duty 8-lug chassis underneath them. So they move up the front differential. The rear axle is a bigger ring gear and pinion, so it generates less heat.
Doesn't that have 2 different transfer cases in those?
Yep, they did. They definitely upgraded all that stuff. So it's like the same drivetrain as a 2500 pickup. And as far as a lot of that goes. And I know that capacity, you're going to probably be closer to 9,000 pounds, I would guess, on one of those, if you could find one. That is a very sought-after vehicle. They quit making those with the new generation in 2015. And they're pretty sought-after to find a 6-liter gas, 8-lug Suburban or Yukon. People like those for that very reason that you're talking about, or else in our part of the world, we see them, people want them for hunting and going off-road and those sort of things. So there's a big demand for them as used vehicles if they're in good condition, that's for sure.
Does that help you out there at all, Dan?
Yeah, I think instead of investing into the gears, save the money and just kind of baby this thing for another year and put the money for a 2500 truck.
Yeah, I think so, because you talk about your weight when you take off for the campground. You're probably over the limit, or not the campground, wherever you're going to work for the year. You're probably over the limit. You're probably geared up with tools and different things. So I would just take it real easy and just knowing that you're only going to do that one pull back and forth until you can get your budget where it needs to be to upgrade the vehicle.
Dan, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Nebraska and talk to Jim. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Jim, what can we do for you?
Well, I've got a Ford 08 Ford Ranger, and it only starts whenever it wants to start. To start with, when I go to start it, I'm 73 years old, and it seemed like the ignition switch was having problems turning it. It took a lot of extra pressure to turn the ignition switch. And now, whenever I go to start it, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it just don't do nothing. Any ideas?
Yeah, you're having to push further towards the start position, right, to get that thing to crank?
Yeah.
It sounds like your switch is just worn out. That electrical portion of that ignition switch, that's the way they'll act. They'll just have to go further and further and further. But also, it could be part of the lock cylinder. It could be bending in there. But the only way you're going to find that out is to take it apart. They've got to pull the lock cylinder out and look at the switch and make sure they don't see any worn parts. If there's no worn parts, then go ahead and put the electrical portion of the switch in there. If they do see worn parts, they'll want to replace those, and the electrical part might be just fine.
It's not as probably as expensive as you think it might be if you get the right shop that's done that kind of work before. Not everybody wants to dig into a steering column for some reason, and people there's a lot of people will just walk away when it involves a cylinder lock or keys or anything like that. But if you've got somebody that's got experience with that, they can dig into that stuff in what should be what would you say, Russ, a couple-hour job?
Yeah, about 2 hours for that. That's
probably
good enough to
go in there and inspect it and replace the necessary parts. I'm trying to remember, does that one have where the key and rack are at in the column? Does it push a rod down further, or is the electrical portion?
That's an 08, so it'd be the newer style. Should all be up top.
Because some of the older ones, you'd have the magic would happen up in the steering column, but then it would push a rod down lower on the base of the steering column where the actual electrical switch was at. And you'd see every once in a while where those things would get something bound up in there, or, and it would be something you could fix at the base of the column. But most of the time, the problem is up there in the housing.
Or we were trying to drive a car we lost back in lost the keys to back in the 80s. So we took our hacksaw and sawed off the pin for the lock right there in between the wheel and the column. And then we would unhook that. We'd use a screwdriver, and you would start the car that way, and it'd slip off and hit the palm of your hand. You
did that a lot. Yeah. When we were out around the salvage yard as a kid growing up, we didn't have keys.
Yeah,
we'd get pretty creative with those lower ignition switch, lower electrical ignition parts.
Putting them back together was kind of a trick with the high beam and everything. You had to put the 2 rods in there and get it just right, and then adjust it.
Forgot all about that. Fun stuff. But Your problem's not that severe, Jim, I don't think, but it's going to cost you a few $100s to get it fixed.
Jim, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show. The Under the Hood Show is brought to you by your local auto value store.
A radio appointment each week to hear the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show.
Eight 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can also watch the show, and you join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Gil Miller from Theodosia, Missouri. Congratulations for everybody here under the hood. And our friends over at Berkeley One Classics celebrating 50 years of collector car coverage. And also Universal Technical Institute, uti.edu. I was recently speaking with some people in North Carolina, and the name John came up from Universal Technical Institute. We didn't realize that we even knew the same partners there, but they have campuses all over the United States, and they've just opened some new ones too. But whether it's Atlanta or Dallas, or if you're looking for a place, you can find a place with nicer weather than where you're currently at. You can get amazing automotive training from all the way from general repair and CNC machining, welding, marine mechanics, all the way right up to the top at NASCAR Technical Institute once you get some other training.
That would be the top for some people.
For some, and other people will be like,
good point.
I want to be a mechanic. I don't want to
Do you
work on
think if you go to NASCAR Tech and you get a job at a NASCAR garage and you're a stay behind guy, okay? You're not going to Circuit of the Americas. Yeah.
I got you.
Do you think your job, are you working harder in the off season or the on season?
If you're the stay behind guy,
yeah.
I wouldn't know.
Right?
Because I haven't been to NASCAR Tech, but it could go, I think they go full out year round.
Like the stay behind guys have jobs to do every day.
Yeah, I think they're full time year round.
Yeah.
Having toured some of those race shops,
or they have like Saturday and Sunday off, and Monday.
Yeah,
I
think Russ hit it on the head. I think there'd be pros and cons. I'm sure our friend John Dotson could help us understand that to a T if we ever interviewed him again. He was fun to interview. But that was, if you're part of the crew that has to turn the rig around when it comes back to the shop, and you're not on the thing, that's a go time.
Or is it just the opposite? You're working 12-hour, 20-hour days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, versus the guys who travel and work those 20-hour days.
I would think it's
Thursday, Friday,
all got to be segmented to match the way the world happens for them.
You would think, yeah.
Because throughout the year they're engineering new cars, they're putting new vehicles together, they're assembling the fleet to have the chassis ready. That's off season, like a farmer, where they're getting all that stuff ready. And
I know F1 bounces ahead sometimes. They'll send a crew to the next one, like a concert, where they're going to set up one garage while the other one is taking place. A lot of questions.
I think they need a show like they did for F1 for NASCAR.
They have one.
There's a similar one.
But
I haven't watched it.
It's all right. It was on. It was the playoffs on Netflix. There was NASCAR playoffs, and there's an IndyCar one, which is great, and that one's coming out soon too. It's good times. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Michigan and talk to Ken. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Ken, what can we do for you?
Hey, Ken. Hey, this is Ken. I'm working at Stellantis right now, and it's my break time. So
cool.
You guys called me at a perfect time.
All right. Go ahead.
My question is about a salvage title vehicle. About a year ago, I went to look at a Prius, and I did a Carfax on the vehicle, and it said it was a total loss from an insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to the vehicle, it looked immaculate. They did a real fine job fixing it. But I questioned the guy. I said, now, is this a salvage title? And he says, no. He got a little bit of an attitude with me. And I said, well, you can't sell a salvage vehicle as a clean title. and he got real skeptical with me and stuff. And my question is, as a dealer, can you buy a salvage title vehicle from, like, this was from Carport. It's called Carport. It's a car auction. Can you buy as a dealer and fix it up and sell it as a clean title?
I can answer these questions really well. But
I just want to say, Ken, I'm not sure there is a better podcast you could have called the world for this question for Shannon.
We've lived this world our whole lives as far as salvage vehicles. We buy salvage vehicles. We've sold salvage vehicles. We've always been about disclosing damage as far as our family company goes. My mom and dad helped craft a law back in 1987 that disclosed damage on all vehicles, including not just insurance salvage, but any vehicle that was damaged. It wasn't as widely received right away as people understood, but once they realized how it was working, it was a neat deal. But nowadays, most states have went to a threshold salvage law or insurance takes ownership salvage law, and the vehicle automatically gets branded with a salvage title. That's with the way that most states in the union are set up right now, or some form of that. Other states have different degrees where they go to junk titles if the vehicle's got a certain damage threshold. It's also subjective. It's very difficult, and people can always want to argue whether it should have been or shouldn't have been. Some states give you the ability to take the salvage title, have it inspected, and then you get yourself a different title, but that history doesn't go away. And that is something that really changed the vehicle disclosure of damage world, was when products came out like Carfax and others. And I know I said to my dad at one time, because he was so passionate about the disclosure laws, I said, at some point, the internet is going to be way more of a judge and jury about a vehicle than any titling law ever can be. And I think that's a good thing. And what we've always talked about and really pushed on the show, and I'm going to go back to your specific question, is that no matter what the paper says, the vehicle has to pass an inspection. The paper gives you an opportunity to have a heads up, to know that this thing's got a story. Now, some of those stories are pretty violent, and they're not pretty, and the repairs that have been done are not very good. And that's what you'll see portrayed often, like in a Carfax commercial. They show the Fox next to a vehicle, and it's got the door hanging, and the front end's wrecked. I mean, I can visualize seeing the commercial all the time. And the other one's clean and glistening and got stars bouncing off of it, and they're trying to show the comparison. For some folks, a salvage title vehicle is a great investment. They buy it at a better price. They understand exactly what they're getting. They have it inspected, and they can see that it doesn't have structural damage, frame damage, or anything that's causing it to not be aligned properly. The safety systems are all in place and working correctly. Those are all the things that have become so much more paramount in the vehicles today. And so I regularly drive salvage title vehicles myself. Our family's had them for years. Russ has had them. Chris has had them. Everybody at this table drives or has driven a salvage title vehicle. The dealer, in this case that you're talking about, that bought one, and for whatever method he used, got the current title so it doesn't show a salvage stamp, to me, that says a lot about the dealer's intentions. And I would be careful, because why wouldn't they want to just tell you right up front, this has been in an accident, it has a salvage title, the repairs have been done, they've been done well, here's the vehicle. To me, that is at some point somebody's trying to deceive to a certain extent. And I don't like, and
it may be legal.
It may be totally legal, but I don't like it.
Right.
Just from a general standpoint. Because here's what's going to happen. If you take that vehicle and buy it and it currently has a clean title, for whatever reason it got one, legal or otherwise, and you take that to a state, I'd say at least over 30 in the union, maybe closer to 40 now, and they transfer that through their system, they're going to do an automatic National Motor Vehicle Title Information System search as part of the DMV processing. And if it triggers that there is a salvage title in the vehicle's history, they are automatically going to assign it a salvage title in that new state that it's being registered in. So that temporary feeling of clean paper goes away and becomes a big problem for a future buyer. And we've had this happen, is how I know this. We've had vehicles that we've purchased from other people, and it's got a regular title, and it was new enough where it wasn't exempt, because they get to a certain age, most states exempt them from the process. And we sold it unknowingly, and the next buyer that took it to another state's calling us back, this thing's got a salvage title. What are you selling me? What did you know? Like, we were clueless on what had happened. So now we actually have, if we sell a vehicle through our dealership, we have a disclosure form that if we know, we tell, and we also have them sign that we can't guarantee future brands.
Could this be the case in Ken's case, that the dealer he's working with doesn't know that it had it?
Well, they wouldn't be combative if they didn't know. They would more than likely say, "Oh, thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Let's check it out.
We got to check this out."
Okay.
Does that make sense to you, Ken, what I was talking about?
Yeah, that makes sense. I was never aware that they could sell a salvage title as a clean title, and then it's kind of on the purchaser that they didn't do their research,
No, the most states where if they have the ability to inspect and fix and sell a salvage title vehicle, there's still a status of disclosure. Many of them go to a rebuilt status. There are a few states, I think, that still allow them, if the damage is below a certain threshold, to get it repaired and inspected and still show it as a clean title. But that history, that mark, does not go away. That stuff is forever archived in these records that are flying around the country. And now the next thing, and I know our state is cruising down the road of an electronic title this year in the legislature, where you won't get a physical paper. It'd be an e-title. And all these e-title systems eventually will be wired together between all the states. It's crazy they haven't done it already. And at that point, these brands and these different rules in different states will create some problems, but they should float easily between any state in the union where these vehicles go.
Ken, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. Let's say I damage my car and the insurance company says, we're going to declare it a total loss, even though it's $4,000, your car's worth $6,000. So we want it to be a total loss. If I get it repaired completely and don't turn it into insurance, is there any?
See, that right there is when we talk about the holes in the system. In many situations, private fleets, self-insured, liability insurance only, this type of stuff, many people fix vehicles and they never end up on any of these salvage title networks.
And they may have been fixed 20 times.
Yeah,
that's probably a lot, but still, there's some cars that have $3,000 damage on the left front, and now they have $3,000 on the right front. Now they have $3,000, and before you know it, there's more total damage, and they don't look as pretty as some of the people that take a car that you could literally unbolt the damaged part, put back on a brand new part that is not damaged, maybe even right from the manufacturer. There is no way anyone could ever tell it was changed. It's much better off than something that was bent and straightened, but it gets that damage closure. So it's not perfect.
Kind of a final statement from me on this would be is that there are a lot of holes in the system that don't disclose damage.
Right.
They've gotten tightened up a lot because of technology.
Mm-hmm.
So they were getting data from more places. But at the end of the day, vehicles need to be inspected and they need to be looked at as far as what the vehicle is.
You
need to compare it to the opportunity. And it's tough when it becomes a sales pitch between one thing or the other.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you got to figure out what value does this have for me, and is this vehicle safe for my family?
866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Harry. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Harry, what can we do for you?
Gentlemen, thanks for taking my call. You guys are phenomenal. I can't believe your knowledge. So I've got a problem with electrical, small problem with my electrical system. I have a 2016 Dodge Ram. Had to have the driver's door replaced about 3 months ago, and ever since then I have had problems with my lights. When I open the doors, my lights will not come on anymore. And on the passenger side, the footlight, where the feet go, that will stay on all the time. The driver's side will not even come on. What I think what they've done, they unhooked my battery. So do I have any problems that I can fix fairly easy?
I have a leading question on this this Dodge Ram, Harry. The door that was replaced was the driver's door, you said?
Yes, it was.
And did they replace that with a factory new shell and transplant all of your pieces? Or did they get another door, a used door from another vehicle and put on there?
No, it was not a used door. They went ahead and put a skin on it and so forth.
Okay. All right.
That's what they've told me. So
okay. Well, the reason I ask, and Russ was probably thinking of something completely different here because his brain goes a different place than mine, but we've had this happen enough where people will buy a used door and then they don't realize that there's modules inside of that door that need to be programmed to match the VIN number of the vehicle that it's on. And so you'll get some conflicts across the data network. But if they took your existing door, removed it off the vehicle, and put an outer skin on it, none of that should have been effective. If they took your door off and removed all the guts out of it and put it into another door shell, your system shouldn't have been affected. Unless they did, I don't want to go there. It's something we see every once in a while where if a shop doesn't disconnect the power and they do some welding or something, it can affect weird things. But I'd be more intrigued to have them just retrace their steps to make sure they have everything plugged in correctly and that everything got, everything got reattached back to 100%. And there's not a pin broke over in a wiring harness where they snap things back together, or maybe something that's not snapped all the way. Beings that happened right after that repair, that's about the only thing that could make any sense I can think of. Power being off could be an unlucky module that didn't reset properly. Russ, what do you think?
I'm just wondering if we have floor lights that work on one side and not the other, and a dome light that's doing weird stuff, those should all be tied together. They should all work. They're not physically tied together. They're modules running different things. So I'm wondering if it doesn't have a module that's a little confused, and that could be because of that driver's door. It might need programming, or it could be something plugged in, not all plugged in, so it's not getting the right ground through the circuit and it's feeding back.
Was the repair done at like a dealership collision center, or was it a private collision center?
Yes, it was. Yeah, Dodge dealership here in Sioux Falls.
I would ask them. They want to get this right, and if you know that it worked before and it didn't work after, you've got to just come back and say, you know what? Can we look at this again? This is not. There's something coincidental here after the repair. It can happen. I'm just going to say it can happen. Russ has talked about it before, where you take power down, you bring power back, and a module just decides, sorry, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. There's soft decisions being made inside these modules. It's not like a hard circuit breaker, kunk, kunk.
Right.
And sometimes that circuit just says, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore.
Same as me.
And so they need to probably just put it on their computer, check the network, scan the network. A lot of the shops anymore do a pre-scan and a post-scan as part of their procedure for repairing a car for this very reason. In the collision industry, that got to be a really big thing in the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years, where the collision centers were debating with the insurance companies that they should get paid to do a pre-scan analysis of the vehicle. Mm-hmm. And then when they get done, they do a post-scan analysis of the vehicle to make sure that, number one, everything is working, and number two, that they're not fixing a problem that was never their problem to begin with.
Right.
Because that's why they do that. and also to show the customer and the insurance company, we've repaired this. Everything's scanning good. It's good to go. And with these newer vehicles, the networks have gotten to be quite sophisticated, and it's very, very important. And so they may have post-scan, pre-scan data that they can go back to and look at also.
Harry, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to Tyler. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Tyler, what can we do for you?
Hi there, guys. I got a 98 GMC K3500 pickup, and I've been having some trouble with the cruise control not working. Just talking it over with some guys, and they said, well, it'll be your brake switch. I said, well, I have brake lights. They work. They're like, okay, well, it might be in your multi-function switch on the side. That's not the cruise is on the blinker on that one, Well, that seems to be all right. I mean, everything else on that switch works. So I found myself a used module and put it on, and I still don't have cruise. So then I found a internet video.
Did you look at the brake light on the top of the cab?
The pins out of the plug.
Is that third brake light on the top of the rear cab, is it working?
Oh, we're having some trouble there with Tyler's. Tyler, are you there?
There you go.
Yeah, you got 3 brake lights on the back of that. The 2 on the tailgate and then the 1 up high on the cab. Does the 1 up high on the cab work?
No.
Yeah, it has to work. If it does not work, the system will not work. So that has to work. Whether you bypass it by putting a light bulb in or a resistor in that circuit or fix it, the cruise will not work. That's a safety check. So when you step on it, sends power out through that. And then when you step on the brakes, it sees that as that's your brake light check. So if that doesn't work, anybody who's got an older GM vehicle that doesn't have a cruise and they don't have a third brake light working, it will not operate.
Now, that may not be the problem, but it will not be
it
fixed.
is one of the problems.
No, right, if he has no high brake light, it's not going to work.
Right. Nope. What I'm saying is that might not be your problem.
Could be more than that.
But
you got to fix that first.
That has to be working or it will never work. Yeah,
right.
The most common problems we see when cruise control doesn't work on those vehicles is taillight circuits, high brake light circuits, and then junky wiring up underneath for an old trailer hitch or something that's gotten compromised and putting resistance on the circuit, making it act weird. Then you get the brake light switch, and of course those cruise modules did fail, but they would typically fail in a range. They didn't often just stop. That's what we typically found. I sold a boatload of those cruise modules back in the day, and they were usually sold because they're mechanical inside, and you use them in the same speed all the time. Eventually, they'd just they'd lose that spot. They couldn't hold it. They'd start to drop. If your switch on the column isn't working, when you push it on and off, there is a light on that truck that comes on that says cruise on, cruise off. And if you push that and cruise goes on, cruise goes off, the switch is most likely working too. And so I think your problem is starting right with that cheap little bulb and the high brake light, and you probably are good to go. And wouldn't that be nice?
That's always nice.
You can't use an LED in there either. It has to be a regular incandescent bulb.
That has been a bigger problem lately. Yes, people putting the LED bulbs in that don't have the same resistance, and then their cruise control doesn't work.
Because that's where the cruise gets its voltage.
No, it's where
it's message. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. All right, that'll do it for Hour 1 of the Under the Hood Show. Hour 2 is coming up. 866-594-4150.
You're listening to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show with the Motor Medics, Shannon Nordstrom and Russ the Super Tech Evans. Shannon is an ASE engine and parts specialist, and Russ is an ASE Master Certified Technician with extensive factory drivability training. Join the Motor Medics for fun and free automotive advice with real-world solutions to everyday automotive problems. The Under the Hood Show is heard weekly on this and other great radio stations across the U.S. Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
With Russ Evans, this is Shannon Nordstrom, thanking you for tuning in to the Nordstrom's Under the Hood Show. Have a great day, and remember, PTLA.
The opinions heard on this program, based on the many years of experience of Russ and Shannon, are offered for entertainment value only and as a guide to your repair needs. No claim to repair or cause is given or implied. Always consult with your own certified technician and follow all safety procedures before attempting any repair. To be a part of the show, call 866-594-4150. Under the Hood is produced by Prairie House Productions. All content is the property of Nordstrom's Automotive Incorporated and may not be used without our permission. Copyright Nordstrom's Automotive, Inc. Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. And we have all lines full now with people trying to get through, so let's get right to them. We start in Texas with Ben. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Ben, what can we do for you?
Hey, guys. I really love the show. Really appreciate your advice. Listen to it pretty much every day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
But I've got a 2006 Dodge Ram, about 145,000 miles. Got driving it on a hour-plus drive, and it started revving a little bit in the engine, just a little, maybe 200-300 RPMs, and then over just a few seconds, it would slowly go right back down to where it was. So not really considerable, but check engine light finally came on after it had been doing that for a little while, and it was P3497, cylinder deactivation bank 2 is what it says. So it looks like it's for the multiple displacement system, the MDS, where it shuts down, half the cylinders. So I actually had this code come up in the past, and then the first thing I had seen when researching it online was just make sure you have the proper amount of oil and maybe change the oil. And the last time this happened, I did exactly that, reset the code, problem went away, did not come back. And that was at least 6 months to a year ago, quite a while ago. And so it seemed like that's all it needed. This time it's only been about 2,000 miles since my last oil change. Oil pressure's good. The oil's still clean. It's right where it should be, so I'm not losing any oil. So I was wondering what your advice might be from there. One thing I was thinking of, though, was to do an engine flush, because I've seen that a lot of times you can have a lot of gunk and sludge building up on these solenoids that shut off the cylinders. So that was one thought I had before necessarily just replacing these solenoids, or I don't know which one might be bad yet, but that was one thought I had. Wanted to see what you guys thought.
Yeah, definitely. We'd start with flushing that out, because it can be a problem. If you get gum and varnish buildup in there from caking oil and things, it'll stop those lifters from activating and deactivating when those solenoids get gummed up. They're pretty small passage in there because there's such pressure that it doesn't take much once they click open to dump those lock pins in those things. But I would start with that. We use the Justice Brothers oil system cleaner in ours and run them, drive them down the road so they switch back and forth. You make sure you got a light load and you're over 40 miles an hour, so it will lock and unlock those. And just watch your dash as it shows lock and unlock. So it runs through a bunch of cycles and allows it to clean. If you just drive it, they're not going to move, so it wouldn't clean up. Same with the transmissions. And then change that oil. Try that a couple times. Right. Like maybe put it in, run it, go 1,000 miles, put it in, run it, so 1,000 miles between your oil changes. And see what it does. If it cleans it up, be using that at every oil change in order to keep those things working.
Because 145,000 miles, it's not a spring chicken anymore, and there is going to be some wear in there. And as the system wears, it cannot make up for the tolerances of, just slightly lower oil pressure and passages that aren't fully flowing. And that oil system is a big factor in how that multi-cylinder system works on most all these trucks anymore. So it's very important to do that. That doesn't work, then you got to come back and ask some more questions.
Ben, thanks very much for the call. Good luck with that. Hoping that takes care of that.
Well, and he rattled off a whole list of things that he was telling us, basically a lot of things that we tell other people.
Right.
That he's already thought about, looked at. Mm-hmm. I think he knows the order of events. He just needed some confirmation to go down that road before spending more money on parts.
866-594-4150. 4150. Let's talk to Chaz. You're on the Under the Hood show. Chaz, what can we do for you?
Good morning, guys. I got a 2011 Chevy Suburban. When I do a first start in the morning, it spits and sputters, falls on its face, and then dies. You cycle the key off, turn it back on, it fires right up, and it's good for the day. It seems like when it sits overnight, it just does it or sits over a period of time, it does it. Am I looking at a fuel pump issue with something like that?
I bet it could be something as simple as pushing a button on a scan tool. It sounds like you might have a problem with the alcohol content monitor. You're going to need to plug a scan tool into it and see what the alcohol content shows. If you know you're putting 10 or 15% in and it's showing 45 or 50% on that scanner, there's a problem, and you need to reset that. And it is resettable with most scanners, most handheld home type ones. It'll have a alcohol content monitor reset, relearn.
Blowing it. I've seen those.
Well,
that's different.
Oh, okay.
That's different.
Different scanners will have different abilities. Most of the really cheap ones have the ability to set it to 0, which means you're going to have to run the vehicle with a non-ethanol premium type fuel for a couple tanks to make sure it's all out of there and then reset it to 0.
So you're calibrating it appropriately.
You could start by just hit the button to get it to start anyways, to get it down to the, it'll be 0, but it actually isn't because you've got 10 in there. But you'll want to, and it'll make it run a little richer. But you'll want to get that to 0% so when you reset it, it's at it. Or if you are running 10 or 15%, run that every single time for multiple tanks and then reset it by adjusting it. Some scanners, like ours, will let us go from 0 to 85.
And if the alcohol content monitor is not the problem, there's a very good chance that you got a fuel pump that is just tired and the check valve can't hold pressure. And so
it takes that.
Yeah. So you've probably done the trick. You've heard us talk about it if you listen to the show before, of just cycling the key a few times before you start it. Have you tried that?
Yep, and I've done that. I did that this morning. I cycled it like 3 times and tried listening for the fuel pump, and I couldn't really hear the fuel pump all too well. But even cycling it this morning, I did it 3 times, and it still kind of fell on its face and spit and sputtered. It didn't die, but it kind of spit and sputtered, so I was kind of wondering.
Yeah, a lot of times if you cycle that key switch and then it works better, that can be a good indication that it's just lost its prime as it sat, and then by cycling that switch, it's just getting a chance to pressurize that line, just like a fire hose. It's pressurizing that line so it's ready to fire. And so you want to, that was a great check that you did, but Russ is on to something else that we've seen on a lot of those vehicles.
Chaz, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's go talk to Cassidy in Nebraska. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Cassidy, what can we do for you?
Hey, how's it going today, guys?
Great.
Good. Hey, I've got a 02 Chevy K3500 that we're having some brake light issues with. So, a couple days ago, noticed that the driver's side only, the brake lights were staying on. This has it's got an integrated trailer brake and factory trailer light, trailer plug on it, but it's had a flatbed put on it. So notice like I said, the driver's side brake lights are staying on. So pulled a few fuses and couldn't get the brake lights to go out. Was told it could be in the wiring going back to the plug-in for the trailer. And so we're getting power to the red wire is all, and there's a little bit of corrosion on it, but nothing else. I followed the wire, the harness as far as I could, and it looks okay. Yesterday, unhooked the batteries and left them unhooked overnight. And then when I hooked them up today, I noticed the lights were off. started pushing on the brake pedal, and when you release the brake pedal, the left light would stay on about a half a second longer than the right light. And I did that multiple times, and it kept staying on about half a second longer. But then when we put the cover back on the trailer plug, the left brake light came back on.
Sounds like there's something corroded or going on in the back end of that. It has a trailer module for the trailer lights, but that's separate from should be separate from the regular lights back there. Something's off. If you're putting a cover on it and it's doing that, you're physically changing something back there, and it's causing the changes. They have a little tail lamp circuit board in the back of them that everything comes through. When those get corroded inside, they'll fail and do that. If there's any corrosion in the socket for the trailer plug, that'll cause an issue too. It's just gonna.
That's fairly.
There's a little bit of corrosion on the red wire. The thing that I can't figure out is, why does the left brake light stay on a half a second longer than the right?
That's weird.
I've never seen that. Unless you've got LED tail lights in this truck, which can mess everything up. And those can be at different stages. Does it have LED tail lights in it?
Nope, they're
regular bulbs.
Just incandescent.
Then it shouldn't be.
Bulbs.
It shouldn't be separate. Those things should be tied together back there for brake lights.
Because normally when they do the flatbeds conversions, they upfit them with a flatbed. They take all the factory. Wiring, all the factory bulbs, everything, and they move it right underneath the flatbed. I mean, that we see that, like the park sensors and everything. They take all the factory equipment and then they just convert it into that flatbed. And sometimes when they do that, I've seen not the best wire routing and protection, especially for vehicles that end up being in some pretty rough environments. They end up being in, they're going out in cattle yards, pastures, running the ditch, working a fence. They get in some rough environments. And having said that, you're definitely going to want to inspect that. But I think that if you clean up every plug-in, just make sure there's no corrosion on it, you got good metal-to-metal ground in the back there, they still retain that factory circuit board back up underneath there. It's kind of above and to the rear of the spare tire. And if that has been penetrated with any sort of corrosion or moisture in there, that'll cause all kinds of weird problems in that rear lighting circuit. So I think you're on the right track. You just probably have to be a little more diligent on how deep you go on the corrosion cleaning and inspection. And that little circuit board isn't that expensive. That's a pretty affordable part, if I remember right. New, and if not, if you're in an area where there's a self-service yard, you could go get one out of another
Dorman
Chevy
Products,
truck.
Our partner, makes that board, and it's I want to say it's like $35 or something like that. It's pretty affordable.
Cassidy, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Wisconsin and talk to Robert. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Robert, what can we do for you?
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call this morning.
You bet.
So I got about a 2020 Ram Bighorn used in October, and I'm just wondering how I can turn off that eco feature on there, where it's shutting cylinders down while I'm driving.
Why do you want to do it?
Well, I've heard some horror stories about, I don't think any honest mechanic would ever say that that's good for an engine to shut cylinders down while you're driving. I've heard it can starve the engine of adequate oil pressure, and I know a guy that blew an engine. He bought a 19 Silverado High Country brand new, and at 110,000 he blew the motor, and his lifters collapsed, and he blamed it on I think in Chevy they call it the fuel management system or something like that, but it's the same thing.
We could get in the weeds pretty far about that debate.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of companies out there that are making software that allows for the shutdown of the actual commands to do it.
I can't remember if it's Ram or if it's Ford that on their 25 models, they now have a button to turn that off permanently. It's a user feature.
I haven't seen that yet.
It's toggled through the video screen where it has that little green. You hit it and it turns green on.
They're getting more brave on what they can do. Apparently,
they're allowing it to be shut off, not just for the one trip, but it shuts it off for every trip. And it's labeled that way. They were using it as a selling feature. So apparently the manufacturers feel that it's enough of a selling point that if they give the owner the choice, they can shut it off. And they must be able to get by. They must have enough emissions. The vehicles are clean enough now.
The threshold's big
that they're
enough.
allowing you to do that, or that part of it has been since this is a 25 model, and these are ones that just came out. They might have been maybe the EPA has had some. They've pulled that rule off of there for certain things. I don't know, but on this Ram, I have not seen it. But it's got to be out there, because if we can think of it, somebody's got it. There's got to be a device that allows you to plug into the OBD2 port and leave it plugged in that will allow you to set features and have them retained. Shannon's got one in his truck, and it allows you to turn it off on the dash, and then it stays. So on your truck, you start the truck up, you hit the button to tell it to not operate, and then it remembers that memory feature.
Mine's on my auto.
time.
Mine's on my auto start stop.
Yeah.
Not on the displacement on demand.
Doesn't it go all your buttons? Have you
No,
tried it?
no. It's just this is programmed just to that one button. It's in line with that one button for mine. So I get irritated by the auto start stop, and so whatever button press I last did is what it remembers when I start the vehicle up.
You can turn it off permanently if you want to get HB tuners and put it in there. I mean, if you do it yourself and a shop hasn't done it, I mean, if a shop does it, you're looking at a couple $100. They buy the credits every time they do it. You could do it yourself. You can buy the tool and the credits and get it done for a few hundred. I think it is $300-400. But you can shut it off. You just go in there and turn off AFM, DOD, whatever you want. Start, stop. You can just set it and leave it, and it'll be programmed out of it.
Before we leave this call, Russ has given pretty good explanation about this system, and mainly related to what we see with more GM stuff. And a lot of the failures we're seeing nowadays are related to the materials that are being used.
Cheap Chinese metal in the parts.
The oil changes not being done with the correct oils and intervals that are favorable to these systems. And so I don't want to just throw water on the entire displacement on demand world. We have vehicles come in regularly with 200,000 plus miles on them that are 100% factory and have never been touched. The engines are running just fine.
I got a 09 Yukon in the shop right now with 480,000 on it, and it's still operating with the original engine.
So it's not like these just make them all fail. But have we seen top-end lifter-related cam failures? Oh, yes, 100%.
I got a few in there right now for an engine.
So, I mean, you just can't cast a blanket over all of it.
So, kind of no help.
Shut it off if you want. Yeah. If you want to shut it off, shut it off.
Yeah.
And you can use HP tuners
but
or
might be.
Another.
But I just don't like, Robert, we always try to be cautious when we hear they're all bad, and because that's just not the case. But there's definitely some people that have had problems with them, and the fact that you've got a guy, we know a lot of guys that have had good experiences and bad both. Just depends on what you want to believe.
In this case, or any case really, would you say that it is simply a formula that Robert has to decide? Is he more comfortable spending $400? And then he'll just be more comfortable.
If you want to be comfortable, do it.
For nothing, he might be fine, but he also might be sitting there for the next 10 years going, any minute.
Well, I'm going to say anybody with a V8 truck that has any one bit of a spirited driving style, it's just, you name it, whether it's off the stoplight or if it's just higher speeds or whatever it might happen to be, this is going to be a statement I might regret someday, but the fuel economy savings is not noticeable by somebody if they're a spirited driver.
Oh, I gotcha. Does that make sense to you, Robert?
A little bit, but I just feel like I want to err on the side of caution. I feel like
then shut it off.
I would rather have all 8 cylinders firing at all time. But the question is, I don't know how to shut it off.
Yeah,
I looked in my settings.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't yourself. You've got to. If you use the tow haul mode, which you won't want to use all the time, I believe it stays off whenever the tow haul is on. But you can use either HP tuners, you'll find that online, to shut it off, or you could search for a device to shut that off. I think there's one that just plugs it into the OBD2 port, and I think that what it does is emulates that it's in tow haul mode.
There's a lot of them available for GM. We probably haven't researched the Mopar stuff near as much, but we know it's out there.
I just can't stand the way they sound. If you've got a custom exhaust system and those things turn on, they just sound like that. They're like, oh, look, I got a 4-cylinder running through my V8 exhaust. It sounds horrible.
Robert, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's go to California and talk to Mike. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Mike, what can we do for you?
Morning, guys. How are y'all?
Great.
Good. Hey, so I have a 1971 GMC Sprint, and it's been sitting for probably the last 12, 13 years in a garage. The motor has probably about 20,000 miles on it, and I want to get it running again, but I'm not sure exactly how to go about that, because I know the oil, everything's probably, down to the bottom. If I should take out like the spark plugs and add oil there or whatnot, change the oil first. I know that. I think when I parked it, probably only had like a gallon of gas in it. But yeah, just trying to figure out the proper way to get it going again.
How many years has it been sitting?
About 12, 13 years without being started.
If it's been sitting that long and not turned over, I would put, if it was a couple years, I'd say just start it up. But this long, I would definitely be looking at some things to clean that engine up. Pull the spark plugs out. Use PB Blaster. That's one of our partners. They've got on their PB Blaster, they've got a control flow straw, so you don't have to like blow penetrating oil all over the outside of the spark plug hole. You just dial it down where you want it and put it right in there. Put some in those cylinders. I'd probably spray like, what do you think, like 3 seconds in each cylinder,
Yep.
Shannon?
Just give it a good...
Yeah, and let it sit there. It's been sitting 12 years. Let it sit there a week or maybe 2.
Okay.
And just to make sure
kind of imagine enough that you're getting enough in there to coat the top of the piston so it can cascade down the
and
sides.
the walls. Yeah, because it will penetrate. It'll creep through and penetrate and get past those rings. The one thing you don't want is one part of one ring in one cylinder to stick and break when you try to crank it. And if that happens, you're going to be burning oil, you're going to have a compression issue, a misfire or something. So, a little too much oil, the worst is going to happen. You might foul some spark plugs out and you put some new plugs in it. So, do it once. And
this
then
is a 350 Chevy or a 400 probably?
Yeah, 350.
Yeah, so I'd spray them in there, maybe a week later, come back, spray it again, but let it sit, and then just try to turn it by hand. Move it gently to the one counterclockwise and clockwise, back and forth by hand. You should be able to grab the hold of the belts on the bottom and the balancer and move it by hand. And if you can move it, an inch either direction, it's free.
With the plugs out.
With the plugs out.
Just rock it back and forth a little bit with your hands.
After it's been sprayed and it's sat for a while. As far as this,
you're just trying to get away from any ridge that might have built up. That you do not want to.
This is a Sprint. Is it behind the back seat in this one?
No, it's under the bed.
It is in the bed. Okay,
Yeah,
okay. It is the back. If it's in the back, I was thinking some of those early ones had them behind, but maybe not. Maybe I'm thinking even older. But pull the tank out and look down inside of them. You're going to want to spray those straps too before you take them off with PB Blaster, because they will rust and break off, and they're hard to find. But if the tank is really rusty inside, you've got 2 choices. Fill it up with apple cider vinegar to the very top and let it sit until all the rust is gone inside, and then empty it, fill it up with new fuel, you're good to go. Or put a new tank in it. I don't know how available those tanks are, but when they are available, they're usually a couple $100 for a brand new one. You could even buy stainless ones if you think you're going to have a rust problem in the future. But definitely put a new tank in it if you can afford it and they're available. It's going to be cheaper than the vinegar trick too. That's going to cost you over $100 itself, and in that it's getting expensive for that stuff at the grocery store. But then you'll want to disconnect the fuel line from the carburetor and flush out those lines really good. Spraying them, flush them out good, and new fuel filter. And I would say after this many years, you're going to want to we'll probably want to replace the carburetor. You could give it a shot. You're not going to hurt anything by hooking up the lines. Once you are ready to crank it, new battery, crank it over, and if it starts, that many years is probably going to have some leaks, but at least you could see how it's going to run. And if it runs pretty good, then you could go buy yourself a remanufactured carburetor, probably cheaper than rebuilding it yourself, and then it's all set and ready to go.
Having said all this, we watched at the Lambrecht auction. I wasn't there, but people that had cars that had been sitting out in a field for 50 years, and they took the fuel line off the carburetor,
gas tank.
They checked the oil and made sure it wasn't stuck. And a few of those started.
Yeah, I was kind of smiled a little bit to myself as a couple people put like a boat gas tank under the hood and pumped up the bulb on it, fired the car up with a jump pack, and they put it into gear. And even with no brakes, they idled it over to the roadside where they could load it up on a trailer. That thing's been sitting since 1966. That's fun. Don't know how well it ran afterwards, but they got them going.
All right, we gotta do something here. One of our partners is Berkeley One Classics, and Berkeley One Classics is your answer for all your collector car insurance needs. But we want to be able to guess, the three of us, before you tell us the color of this GMC Sprint, which is like a Chevy El Camino. I'm thinking it's silver.
Silver, I'm going to go gold, the gold hues, the yellow gold hues.
Green.
Mike, what color is the Sprint?
All right, guys, it was repainted. It's Dodge Viper Blue.
What's the original color?
Cream.
I believe it was a goldish color.
Chris just had to hear that. Chris just had to hear that.
Yeah, I was on that. Thanks very much for the call, Mike. I think we should go with, we should take the color wheel and we can pick hues instead of, although then you got white and black.
You just want a range.
Just a little bit. I want a little bit of a chance there.
We've never busted anybody's chops for saying, oh, it was cream, not white. We'll claim the win if we're that close.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. We'll claim it, but that doesn't mean we won't get grief from the other two.
That's true.
866-594-4150. Let's go to New York and talk to Joe. You're on the Under the Hood show. Joe, what can we do for you?
Hello.
Hey, go ahead.
Thanks, guys, for taking my call.
You bet.
Yep. I've got a 2012 Nissan Altima. It's got 126,000 miles on it, and I'm having a gas mileage problem. I had a O2 sensor light come on, and it was on there just briefly, and now it's off. And I was just wondering if that might be one of the problems, because from what I read, it's 100,000 miles to replace these. And like I said, I got 126 on the car, but would be the O2 sensor downstream. Would that be an indication of bad gas mileage?
Upstream and downstream sensors on this car. They both play a part in the fuel trim, but those sensors, a lot of people don't realize that they do wear out like spark plugs. They're typically around 100,000 mile sensor. And the longer you go on the sensor, starting at about 50,000 miles, they start to degrade, and they do affect fuel economy a little bit. If they're reporting a bad number back to the computer, it's going to say, okay, I believe it because you're there, you're part of me. I'll just adjust according to that. So that may help with your fuel economy a little bit. You would need to start with the sensors, with the mileage, and then read the fuel trims and see what they look like. That way, at least, we're getting an accurate reading from the exhaust system, and we could see now, is it adding fuel or subtracting fuel? And we want to get that as close to zero as we can, and that can be fuel system cleaning. It can be a spark plug issue. It can be O2 sensors, mass airflow sensor that's dirty, a number of things, or a vacuum leak, even something as simple as a vacuum leak, cracked air hose into that intake. It can do that. So some things to check, but the O2 sensors for sure with this many miles, especially if you had a code that came on, could definitely be a problem.
Joe, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show. 866-594-4150.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's go to Arizona and talk to Kenny. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Kenny, what can we do for you?
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
I'm listening on KNPR out of Lake Havasu City.
All right. Welcome.
Thank you. I receive your program Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock here on our local station.
All right.
I live in the, right now I'm off the grid. I'm living off the grid out in the desert here in between Havasu and Kingman. And I've got in my pickup the other day and my F250 heavy duty 97 to go up to my sister's house, which is 11 miles away. And I made it 3 miles up the road and all the forward motion stopped. I got out of the vehicle and followed the trail of transmission fluid all the way back to my house.
Oh, no.
Yeah, there's a big pool where, big puddle there where it, I let it run for about a couple minutes to warm up after I started it up. There's a big puddle there, and I followed the trail all the way 3 miles away, and the fluid came out in between the dust cover and the bell housing. And it's on a fresh rebuild. It was rebuilt in October of 21. One of the most reputable shops in town here. I don't know what caused that. I hear it's probably the front transmission seal, but the way the fluid came out of there, it appeared to be more than that. I was just wondering if you might have any speculation on what caused that to happen.
There is a front pump bushing in that transmission that if it gets enough wear and it moves, it will wear out the seal, it'll wear it unevenly, and it could go out. But that usually occurs from towing very heavy loads, getting it very hot and burning that up, and then it burns the seal up. The more likely thing is that the seal just failed. It's got a spring on the inside of it that holds it up tight in there. It may be that spring broke. That can happen. They're so cheap. They're so thin and so cheap. If that failed, then it'll allow that seal to stretch out a little bit and start leaking. Or it could have popped out of there. It could have just not been very tight when it was installed originally, and it's taken this long for it to come out with temperature changes and things. There's not a whole lot of pressure going on in there.
And you got a lot of big temperature swings where you're at down there.
Yeah. So no matter how you look at it, you're going to have to remove it to fix it. But one thing we definitely want you to check when you have it removed, maybe even before, check the end play on the engine. That's how far, if you grabbed a hold of the balancer on the front of the engine where the belts are and pulled it towards the front of the car and then pushed it towards the back of the car, if that thing's moving a lot, it could have caused some issues with that as well, as it pulls that torque converter forward and back. There'll be a tiny little bit. There's a spec for it. But if it's got too much and there's a groove worn in that torque converter, that could be an issue. A lot of times we'll see a groove get worn in there at one position, and then that crank walks a little bit with accelerating and decelerating, and it moves over to the groove and it starts leaking, and then it'll go back. Some of them only leak when they're turned off. Some of them leak only when they're running. But either way, you got to pull that transmission out to find out what's leaking.
And hope that he didn't damage it
right
with the fluid loss and the internals getting hot.
Is there anything that he can, I mean, when he brings it in, because that's how this works, right? I mean, this is going back into, this is going back in to get worked on. Is there anything he has to tell them besides what he told us?
If he's truly got a reputable transmission shop that he's worked with for the rebuild, I would think they'd be interested, even though it's well out of warranty, but they'd be interested in inspecting what happened.
Right.
For their future proof of things that they're doing. If they're rebuilding them in-house, they definitely want to know.
Yeah.
If they're buying somebody else's reman and selling it as a replacement exchange, I think they still want to know.
Right.
And a lot of those might have a, you're out of your 3-year 100,000 or 3-year 75,000 or whatever it might happen to be because of the years. But they're going to want to know, and they might. I know shops we know that we would call a reputable shop. They would want to know, and they would say, "Hey, let's see what we can do to make this correct as affordably as we can." We already know you spent what, $3,000 probably, Kenny?
Yeah, $3,000.
Yeah, and so hopefully they'd be willing to say, "All right, something happened here. Let's investigate. We'll do an autopsy, and we'll let you know what we find."
Mm-hmm.
And they could tell you point blank what they find and what has to be replaced again, and hopefully they'll treat you right.
Kenny, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. That does not sound fun. Although, there's no. I was trying to think, just knowing that the way it happened, at least there's no uncertainty, but that doesn't sound fun.
Just listening to that call triggered me when he said Kingman. Show contributor Ron Reserve was just recently sent me an email that Kingman is the end of Route 66, isn't it? Isn't that where they shot the Cars movie?
It's based on that area through there.
Yeah, I think so. That just triggered me when I heard that.
66 goes all the way to California.
Yeah, but there's something there. It must be the Cars thing.
Barstow?
Right. What's that?
Barstow? Goes through Barstow. I was there.
It goes all the way to California, right?
Yeah.
But there's Kingman is one of the areas there. There's a lot of that stuff. So when we were down
There's
in
like
Amarillo,
a big anniversary coming up. They're doing a party down there. That's what he was telling me about.
I was back in Amarillo at Christmas, and we went through an area that I took a bunch of pictures of 15 years ago. They've torn it all out. There's part of Route 66 that had an old, town with all the glass gas stations, rows and rows and rows of them, about 2 miles worth. They bulldozed it all.
I'm playing it feels like there should be Desert Blues playing.
I was like, what did they
tore it all out?
Then they just bulldozed it.
Mm-hmm.
Go down the bowling alley.
They didn't build anything new. It's like, why are you bulldozing it? They said they had too much crime in there.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Lisa. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Lisa, what can we do for you?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for taking my call.
You bet.
First time caller. Anyway,
Thanks.
2010 Kia Soul. It started this winter. Every now and then when you start up, high squeals noise. And turn off the vent heater, whatever, it seems to stop quicker. And then, like when reversing, you turn the wheel with your brakes on a little bit, and it starts squealing either way. And it's periodically, occasionally, but almost every morning.
Can you make the noise?
No.
Okay.
Chris asked that. If you're watching our video feed, Chris asked that question with like a big smile on his face.
And
I'm not falling for that. No.
People do it.
It kind of sounds like a serpentine. Like a serpentine squeal.
I think that's what it is exactly. And what you need to do to fix that, and you turn the AC off, you got less load on it because the compressor shuts off, or the defrost. It'll do it in the wintertime too, depending on your temperatures. But the belt's slipping around is what's happening. So you need to replace the complete belt component kit, not just the belt, not just a tensioner. You need to get the whole kit, and that's why they sell it that way. They give you the belt kit, which contains the tensioner, the idler pulley, and the belt. It's all ready to go. You bolt it on. It gives you the proper tension, plus has a new belt now, and also clean the pulleys off. You want to get take a rag and some carburetor cleaner, put on the rag, and you wipe all the pulleys off really good that you don't replace, of course, to get the contamination off, make them stick really good.
Is there anything else that the thing I thought of there was a water pump? Is there anything else that she should do when she's doing this that makes sense because of the work involved? Do you know what I mean?
They're going to want to inspect. Okay. The kit's going to come with the tensioners or the
tensioner, idler.
It's going to have all that stuff on there if you get the kit, and you're going to replace that. And it's just the existing pulleys you want to clean up.
Watch out for oil leaks. If they're there,
that's exactly where I was going to go.
That valve cover's leaking down the front of the engine. You want to replace that.
You could find that you have an oil leak that's contaminating the path of the belt.
Mm-hmm.
And if you stop the oil leak, you might get fortunate enough you could clean everything up and get it back without having to spend more money. So I would look for an oil leak. And the reason why it's doing that at brakes, your engine idles down. When you go to steer hard one way, you're putting a lot of pressure on that power steering system. And that's just all more opportunities for that thing to make the noise you wouldn't make for us. And so it is most likely I'd look for an oil leak first. Russ, I'm glad you brought that up. And then make sure you're, when you do it, that they do a kit.
Lisa, thanks very much for the call. Good luck.
I'd probably use use a brake cleaner. Instead of carburetor cleaner, use brake clean because it's going to be less caustic and it's made to remove grease and dirt and stuff like that. CRC's got a great brake clean and it'll be pretty affordable because you're going to need like a couple cans of it to clean the whole front end off really good.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Doug. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Doug, what can we do for you?
I have a 97 Tahoe with about 120,000 on it, and due to an oil change, I think I changed. Anyway, I've got at a cold start, I got a little bit of a clatter, and it's been a tick, 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 and then after that, after it runs a little bit and warms up, it quiets down. So, is there a cleaner that would work really well? Because it holds really good oil pressure. It doesn't leak, doesn't burn. Ball's in your court.
In our shop, we use the Justice Brothers oil system cleaner. I use it quite often. I just had a guy yesterday that needed some in a vehicle. You're going to find that at professional shops. You can also find it in some parts stores will carry it. Here, our Auto Value store carries it. Used to be the Sturtevant store. You put it in about 10 minutes before you change the oil. Oil's going to get really dirty because it's a heavy detergent, and then you change the oil. You don't want to leave it in there. It suspends everything in the oil system, and then you change it. That could help out with that clatter a little bit in there because that's still the old 350 design, the old V8 Chevy.
Yep.
And then
is there anything?
Go ahead. I was just going to say their engine oil system cleaner is step one, and then they've got an engine oil treatment that if you know you've got it cleaned out, even if you don't have it cleaned out, we've had that stuff be effective in quieting down lifters.
The one they call engine tune-up. Yep. It's great. I mean, you can literally pour it in when the motor's warmed up, and in a couple minutes, it's just gone. It goes pretty quick because it's flowing through there really fast. And it's more effective in the first few seconds of it being in there than later because it's made to evaporate as it goes. Plus, it's got a metal conditioner in it to treat the metal to reduce the friction and this problem of sticking.
Because I've noticed that long cruises, I change the oil, I put 0.30 in it to get it so it would clean. It's better. And is there anything against using like a T6 Rotella 540?
I wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't think you need to do that. I think if you stick just with your 530 oil and a system cleaner, it would help.
Doug, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. It is interesting when we talk about that, how it's available some places and not others. It's also interesting to see what is available at my local stores, at my Auto Value stores.
And people, you hear us talk, listeners, you hear us talk a lot about different products. We only talk about the different products that we use in our own shop, and we know that you like different ones. So if you hear us mention one and you say, oh, I've used them in the past, that's why we're mentioning that and another partner's product, because like TV channels, they're both may be good, but you may have a choice yourself. So we're going to let you know what we like. If you don't hear us talking about it, it may not be so good.
That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Until next time, you can find us at underthehoodshow.com. Thanks for listening to the Under the Hood Show. All right, this is the after show. We're going to keep going. If you're on hold, stay there. We're going to get to you as soon as we can. Time varies. Time is, it's all relative, I hear. So if you're on hold, it might seem longer than it is. Also, we might talk really long and it takes too long. So we get it. Let's go here and talk to Dale. Let's talk to Dale. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Dale, what can we do for you?
Well, a couple of months ago, my wife and I bought a 2006 Mustang around Christmas time.
Okay.
And we're between Harrisburg and Canton, so we're, local to you guys too. So we have driven it a little bit. We're both in our 70s, and my wife is a small gal to start with, and she has problems shifting the thing. You have to push that button with your right thumb, and the way you sit, you're like back in the seat too, so you're trying to reach ahead, and with arthritis in her hands, she can't push that button so you can shift. She's got to try and reach over with her left hand too and help.
Yeah,
So,
I've had to do that before when I hurt my hand.
Yeah.
I've been getting that lately.
Is that just strictly mechanical?
Yes, I know exactly what you mean because
if
I can't
could
push buttons. There's no way to. So inside of it, there's a spring that when it's in park, you push the button, and the pressure of that button going in overcomes the spring pressure and lifts the lock off, so you can get it out of gear. If you're a little mechanical, you could take it apart and you could change the spring pressure. There's ways to do that. You figure it out. If you're mechanical, you'll figure it out. But yes, the button pushes it as it moves over. It's got a little ramp on it, and that ramp pushes down on the rod
detent,
going straight down, which then pushes it down out of the way of the gate, so it allows it to move. That thing moving up and down, so you've got some pressure because of the ramp. You've got a ramped little piece of metal pushing down on this.
We're watching the finger video on video.
But then there's a spring in there. So if you pull it apart, you're going to see the spring. And the spring's in the up and down, the vertical part. So if you pull the knob off the top and you look inside of it, there's a little piece of plastic you can pull out, and the spring will be part of that. And you could just change the amount of that spring rate, and I think you'll get it to go. You don't want to make it where it's unsafe, where you can just pull it into gear. Yeah. But that can be done as well. People could do that. Okay. You could remove that lock completely, and then you could just put it in any gear, but then you run the risk of it not being in park when you stop.
Yeah. That's what I wondered, if it was truly just mechanical or if there was some electric in there too that you had to release it to make, or you would burn something up.
It is electric. You've got a solenoid. When you step on the brake, the solenoid allows you to push that button. So I think if you remove the spring pressure from it,
the electric part will still
even
work.
more, the electric part should still not allow it to pull out of gear until you step on that brake. But you should be able to reduce that spring pressure, because some cars, that Mustang's pretty hard. I know we've had a number of them in, and you got to push it pretty solidly. It's pretty firm to push it, where other cars, you just barely touch it and it's right out of gear. It's super simple.
I would.
Well, do you replace the spring that's in there, get one with less tension?
Or modify it. It's up to you.
Can you adjust the?
No, it's not adjustable. You'd have to modify it or put a different spring in there. Something you'd have to do on your own since it's a safety feature, you'd have to figure it out. But that's how it operates. So it could be done.
I mean, it wouldn't be safe, but I'm sure there's a way you could clamp that knob to have the button permanently pressed in.
Put some duct tape around the top of it.
Pull it in. I mean, seriously, you could redneck it.
Well, that I was thinking of that, like a clamp, but in my scenario, I was unclamping it and clamping it would be the same motion. It would be the squeezing motion but you could wrap it up so it would
push it in, wrap it up tight with, put some saran wrap on it so you don't hurt your knob, and then tape it tight.
Don't do that, Dale. Do not do that. We would not suggest it, but that's what I would do. Or have it taken out, like you said, just set it so it's
modify that spring. I think would probably be the best idea. You could take a few.
I think it's probably there's probably a specific engineering inch-pound number of pressing that to make it child safe. Okay, a child under 5 can't push this easily, but an adult should be able to push it with minimal effort. There's probably a big algorithm designed into that shifter, but I know for a fact that a lot of cars are super easy to push that button. Like you could do it with the side of a very sore pinky Where this Mustang, you got to have a hold of that and push it pretty hard.
I've done it on our Honda where I've just used my index finger, grabbed it without my thumb at all, and just pushed laterally with my finger. And
That one's a pretty easy one. Monte Carlos, those were pretty hard to, and the Impalas, they were pretty hard pushing that button, about like the Mustang. Can't think of anything else that had an easy button. I tell you what, back in the 80s, anything from any of the F-body Camaro and Firebirds from 70 where you had to push down on the button, those were pretty stiff, and sometimes you had to push them forward to push them down, put it into gear. Yeah, that's a thing. I could still smell the interior.
Dale, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Wisconsin and talk to Dan. Dan, you're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Hey, nice to hear you guys. I look forward to listening to you every week.
Thanks.
Thank you.
My daughter has a 2018 Kia Forte, and she's had it a couple years. In the last year or so, she's had a problem with water leaking into the passenger floor carpeting, and she's had it to the dealer a couple times, and they blew out this evaporator hose.
Yep.
And it doesn't seem to do anything. We just got 1.5 inches of rain here in Green Bay just yesterday, and the floor is all wet today. And she called the dealership, and they're going to charge her $210 to do a diagnostics on it. And I was wondering if you guys ran into this, and what do you get? How do they diagnostic this problem?
Well, what would you say if I could have you diagnose this for $3? Well, inflation, it could be as high as $6 now.
I like this idea.
I think he'd like that idea, Russ.
Go to your local dollar store or whatever, buy yourself a small bottle of dishwashing detergent, or go steal some out of the kitchen, the sudsy kind, and mix it up very heavy so you get lots of bubbles like the kids would love to play with. Just get yourself like a gallon bucket, mix it up really heavy, good 5-second squirt in there, Sounds horrible, doesn't it? Anyways, mix it up, and then you're going to turn your blower, get in the car, start it up, put the blower on high, but make sure it's on outside air, blowing out the vents inside, but on outside air, not the little arrow for recirculate. Then get out of the car, close all the doors, make sure the windows are up tight, and you're going to pour that soapy water all over the outside of the car. You're going to start at the top by the sunroof if it's got one. And does it have a sunroof?
No.
Good.
Not.
Good.
That's
I was going to say that could be a whole different problem.
One less problem area.
Well, start up on the top where the sunroof should be, pour it down the glass around the vehicle and around the doors. I think you're going to find it in that glass area, but look around, and if you see bubbles coming out where it shouldn't be coming out, like a corner of a glass, it's probably rusted under there or has a bad seal and it's leaking.
The bubbles are going to come out
outside from the inside. Yeah, they're going to blow
because the pressure from the
inside
inside is going to make bubbles blow out of an air leak. Or, if you see that around your lower, like he said, the lower corner of the front windshield, or maybe, it's going to be somewhere in that area. If this car was sitting when you had the rain, correct? Did we understand that right?
The car was sitting. Last year we did try hosing the car down with water, but we didn't do the soap.
Gotta use
so
soap.
That would be something for us.
Well, you understand what he's doing there. He's creating a different pressure inside the cabin with the blower turned on high all the way, and so that way it's pressurizing the inside enough that when you put the bubbles on there, it'll find its way out and create air pressure to make a bubble on the outside.
Yep. So do that first, and then the next step is you're going to have to make sure that if that doesn't show a leak, then it's internal, which means it's running down the windshield into the cowl vent, and it's running through your HVAC box, which means it's not sealed up well, or the drain's clogged on it for some reason. It might be multiple trips to clean that out. It might be that it's got so many leaves jammed in it. Maybe somebody's removed the cabin air filter or something, or the vent's off on the outside, and it's got debris in there, and it's just continuously, it doesn't take many leaves to plug up one of those drains.
And if you look on the vehicle itself and you don't see any bubbles, there are usually screens or something that cover up the cowl vent area, and you kind of want to check down in there too, because some of these GM vehicles back in the day, they would get corrosion, or we had a few that had a problem where they didn't quite seam seal it good enough from the factory, and they'd get enough water built up, and then they would leak down at a weld at a factory point where they were welded. And that was a flaw on those cars. But this car is a 2018. I'm guessing it's something environmental that has happened to it as it's lived its life now for 7 years.
Dan, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. Can I do it at a car wash? Can I go just spray the foamy stuff on it, or
It's not that good.
Not enough?
You need a bucket, and you just need to put it on there.
Okay. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Tim. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Tim, what can we do for you?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Fantastic, Tim.
I have basically a general oil question. I'm sure you guys have talked about this before. I just couldn't find it. I apologize if you have.
Well, that's all right. We got people listening at different times all the time. It's great to bring subjects back around.
Okay. Well, and I do have an 06 Ram 25 or 3500. It's got the 5.9 diesel in it, but I guess my general question is I don't really drive a lot of different cars. I have very much. I've got a tractor that sits a lot as well, and so I guess I'm curious to see what you guys' opinion on oil duration is versus runtime or miles on an engine. So, for instance, this truck I have, I drive it maybe 2,000 miles a year. But, so in theory, I wouldn't change the oil in 2 years. Same with my tractor, same with some of my gas cars. So I was just kind of wondering what you guys feel about how long that oil should sit in the engine, or does it matter? And I do have another question. I'm just going to fire them all off at you if you guys can remember them all. Idling time, is that hard on the oil as well as starting the car up, let it warm up for 10 minutes versus just letting it get up to pressure and taking off? And in both of these situations, is synthetic oil better in either one of these situations than conventional oil? I've always wondered this stuff, and I'm just not sure.
What's the storage environment? I would want to know that just for fun.
These vehicles, I drive them, so they just sit, out in the driveway. I mean, so they're used. They're not necessarily
No, but outside storage. And
yeah.
What part of the country did you say you're from?
I'm in South Dakota. I'm over by Rapid City.
All right, so you're getting crazy climate swings.
I would be changing the oil once a year in everything. If it's so low of miles that it doesn't need to be changed, I'd be going once a year. And I would use the synthetic oil. It's going to hold up better against breakdown in cold and hot and where you're at. We have the same thing here where we're at on the other side of the state. As far as running it, so if these are all fuel-injected vehicles, then if you start it, it's going to be in a lean mode when it's sitting there idling. They try to stay pretty lean, so I'm not real worried. I've seen thousands of cars that have remote start systems on them in South Dakota that just run and run and run when it's cold, and they just don't have issues. I've seen so many people on their soapbox on YouTube saying, oh, you can't run it, let it idle. Oil's going to mix with the gas down in that crankcase, and it's going to eat up your engine and destroy it in low miles. Well, no, that's not going to happen. Now, if you have a carbureted engine, it was quite common on cars. We had an old Mustang we pulled in and out of our car audio shop every day, and it ran for 20 seconds, in, out, every single day. That gas would build up in the crankcase. It would be a half a quart over full. It would smell bad. It would foul plugs. It would run awful. And we would have to change the oil, put spark plugs in it, and get it on the highway and run it and get it good and hot. And then it would do it again. So carbureted cars, not so good to let them sit and idle and warm up. But the fuel injected, we just don't see a problem with that. It's not going to hurt to let it warm up a little bit and then go drive it. At least we have never experienced that or even witnessed that happening. But the reason you want to get that oil out of there on a once a year basis, at least, with the low miles, it's not going to get quite as dirty, but you're still going to build up acids and things in the oil from just your running shorter trips, and that will eat some stuff up. And even with a extended drain oil filter, like, there's companies like Wix that make an XD filter. They're not a partner of ours, but I see them out there. We've used them in the past where they've been a partner. And the XD means extended drain. They can hold up longer. The cardboard element inside won't turn to mush and clog up the system if it's left in there too long. We've seen some filters after 4 or 5 years that are not much of a filter anymore because they're pretty cheap materials. They're made to be changed. So you're supposed to change this at a regular interval. So I would say the warm-ups, not concerned about real long warm-ups. Changing the oil once a year, yes. Synthetic oil, yes.
And I would not, and we've talked about this, if you're storing it outside, going outside and starting it for 10 minutes and letting it run and shutting it off is actually worse.
Running it and driving it. Warm it up before you drive it.
Yeah,
yes.
no, but you were asking about just maybe two different things, were you not? About whether or not you warm it before driving, or are you just going out and starting it and shutting it off?
No, I do, in response to Russ's answer, I have been changing the oil in all these vehicles once a year. So I didn't know if that was enough or not, and it sounds like it probably is fine.
Mm-hmm.
The idling question, it was a general question about idling, and Russ is right. I mean, you hear a lot of different things about, letting it idle too long before it's just better just to fire it up, let it get oil pressure for 30 seconds to a minute and just take off because it'll get up to temperature faster that way. And if it's got oil pressure, then in theory, it'd be fine. And others say, no, you got to let it get warmed up before you leave. And so, but I never really fire them up and just shut them back off. I always drive a long distance, at least 20 miles. So they all get warm when I do drive them. But yeah, I was just kind of curious as far as, should I fire it up and let it idle for 5 minutes and get warmed up, or is it all right just to fire it up and take off, or is it worse on the engine either way?
My vehicles that have been sitting for a while, even though it's inside storage, I've just, whether it's right or wrong or not, I've always gotten a habit. I fire them, make sure I got oil pressure. Sometimes I'll turn them right back off again if I don't see the oil pressure going, just to kind of make sure I'm getting a prime in that oil system. And then I'll fire them up, and I like to let them run at an idle for a while just to make sure all the fluids are flowing good and everything's moving along before I put more stress on the engine or the transmission to just take off fairly soon. Because if I have the time. If I was in a hurry, would I be worried about it? No. But usually when I'm taking those vehicles out, I'm not in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think it can't hurt to get things just warmed up and get the fluid moving. It's got to be advantageous at some point.
Does that help you out there, Tim?
Yeah, answer my questions. Thanks, man.
Cool.
Just always kind of wondered that. Wasn't sure.
Cool. Thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Rhode Island and talk to Frank. You're on the End of the Hood Show, Frank. What can we do for you?
Hi, guys. How's things?
Great.
Good.
And the last time I called, I believe you were at the Barrett show.
Okay.
And you had taken my call off air. And I never got a chance to text you back because I could not find the picture. I was curious about if they were going to have any 69 Cooters.
I remember that.
And I couldn't get the picture. And it was a vintage Cooter, 1969, and it was a ragtop. And I was just curious if anyone were around. And I'm still kind of like, checking around.
When you're down there,
a nice car.
When you're out there for Barrett Jackson, the time we were there together in the fall, they had about 800 to 1,000 vehicles there. And I went back down there for the winter show, and they had 23 or 400 vehicles there, and there was definitely about every version of a CUDA that you can imagine. And
Really?
I'll tell you that. And Russ has seen this. He's been there a few times. I've been there a few times now. If you are interested in a vehicle like that, and you don't need a number one grade trailer queen going to every car show, and you just want to find yourself a good vehicle that you can enjoy, maybe the paint job's not as nice. Maybe when you look underneath it, you can see they're hiding a little bit of rust, or there's some overspray because they just painted it. But as long as you know what you're looking at, there's some good value on day 1, day 2, even day 3 cars. Now,
I would say even later in the mornings.
Yep. You just got to watch. We do a lot of auction buying for our salvage auction, and you got to be watching all the time. You just not for CUDAs, not for CUDAs. You just got to be watching all the time, and you just never know. You never know the reason on the other end why somebody's selling, why they're selling right then. You don't know who the other bidders are right at the time that are interested. It's such a timing thing. But if you haven't done it for free, if you're internet savvy at all, you can get on Barrett Jackson's website, and they have all and Meekum does the same thing. They have all their sales posted, and when you sign up to get their emails, that gives you access so that you can log in and see what vehicles sold for and what's upcoming in future sales, and give yourself a little bit of a research tool to learn some things. And that's always interesting to go back through, and I usually spin through it really fast, and I'll put in filter word Trans Am just to see what anything Trans Am brought during sales, just because I just kind of watch the market. And you can do that fairly quick when you're logged in as a participant in their website.
Okay, great. That sounds good. Yeah. I had seen that picture that a friend of mine had, and I just kind of got, I had a Charger and looking at this CUDA with the lines, and the whole thing on muscle cars. It was just with the hideaway headlights, and just beautiful style with the ragtop,
Oh, my sister is in that world, and she sells a lot of those collections, and she's sold big Mopar collections, and she's sold big GM collections. I know she's got a GTO sale coming up at Vanderbrink Auctions, but you see those cars all together, a bunch of them. It's hard for your heart not to skip a beat.
Yeah.
To just remember, what that meant at that era, what that vehicle meant.
Yeah.
And that's why people love them.
Totally.
Exactly. I had a quick question. I got an '08 Chevy Cobalt, 100,000 miles. The car runs good. I'm losing a lot of power, like going up hills. And what I'm concerned is the timing chain. It has a timing chain adjuster, which is basically a spring-loaded ratchet cylinder with a piston on the end. As the chain would loosen, would that compensate for adjusting it?
Yeah, it does. If it's rattling, then it's not. But if it's quiet, yes, that would take that up, and then it's got a camshaft sensor and a crankshaft sensor, and if it gets too far out of whack, it'll give a cam-crank correlation error code, and that tells you got a problem. It's too far out. But if it's losing power, if this car burns oil, I'd be concerned about a catalytic converter starting to get plugged up, or an issue with the fuel system.
No, actually, no oil burning at all.
That's good then.
No, it's right on the mark.
Probably not a problem with a catalytic converter then, but you can check back pressure by pulling out the front O2 sensor up closest to the engine to see how much back pressure it is using a mechanical gauge. And if it's too high, you need to replace that. I've seen a few of them just collapse inside, melt, and fail. But also low fuel pressure will cause that issue as well. A dirty mass airflow sensor, that'll do that. If you got a dirty mass airflow sensor, you can clean that, CRC, carburetor cleaner, spray it off, and then just let it air dry. You don't want to blow on it with anything because it can damage the hot wire. But try that, get it to get it clean, because a mass airflow sensor, that is a main input to the engine. As the air goes across it, the computer determines how much amperage it needs to keep that wire at a certain temperature. The more air, the more amperage it needs to keep it at that preset temperature. And then it says, hey, more air, more fuel, let's go. And if it's dirty, it says, oh, well, it's got a blanket on it. It's warm. We're not needing more fuel. So it's going to run weak. Got to clean it up. Take that blanket off.
And if you really want to know and you don't have a check engine light on, you need to get a technician that can take the car out and drive it with diagnostic equipment hooked on it and look at what the fuel trims are doing and just see what's happening as he puts a load on it. And they can start to dial it in pretty quick if it's doing it all the time.
Frank, thanks very much for the call. Now, if this were 20 years ago when I started on the show, I would ask the following question. And now, after 20 years of experience, I can answer it too. In 25 years, in 30 years, is there going to be another generation doing this show and somebody's going to call in and go, man, have you seen any 08 Cobalts around? I really want to get an 08 Cobalt, and
Probably not.
Maybe an SS.
I think they are, because it wasn't too long ago that you guys were guessing the color on like a 93 Caprice or whatever it was. And I didn't want to guess the color, and you guys were like, no, that's totally. So I think the answer is yes, they will be looking for 08 Cobalts in 40 years.
Somebody will.
Somebody will.
Maybe not a lot.
It might not be at Barrett Jackson, but it'll be out there.
I'm telling you, a Cobalt SS will be, somebody will want one.
Okay. Let's talk to Stephen in Ohio. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Stephen, what can we do for you?
Hi, thanks. Really appreciate the show and you guys sharing all your information.
Thanks.
I'm supposed to be getting a new truck here, and it's the 3-liter Duramax.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering, how soon is too soon to change the oil in it? Should I do it at like 500 miles, 1,000 miles, more or less? I mean, it's something I like to change my own oil and keep my vehicles for a long time. My other truck's an 04, so I know going to a 2025 is going to be a big jump in technology here.
Yeah, so the first oil change, we like to go with what the dash says. If you're putting miles on it, right? This is going to be your everyday driver.
Yes.
Yeah, then drive it till the light comes on for the first change. That's preset for the oil that's in the vehicle. They want it to break in, so they've got the right oil formula. They're breaking oil, if you will.
It's going to be longer than you're going to feel comfortable with, probably.
And then after that, those engines, we've seen a few in our shop. They've been holding up really good. They haven't had any oil system problems with them. If it was my own vehicle, I'd be probably pretty comfortable going the 5,000-mile oil change. I think they're more like 8 to 10,000 is what that dash light's going to come on at, but I wouldn't go that far. The first oil change, I'd just wait and ride it out until the light came on for the first one, change it the first time, and then knock it down. Factory recommended if they're recommending less than 5, but I don't think they are.
No, I'm probably sure they're probably longer than that, but that's just even going to the light seems bad on the first one. I think you would want to change it out and get rid of the junk that's in there.
Well, like I said, but they've got most of the manufacturers will load their first change with a specific oil.
Usually a non-synthetic.
They're in there to help
seat the rings.
Just get that thing broke in well. And they also, in many vehicles, especially diesels, I think, and performance vehicles, they're doing some controls in the computer too that will restrict certain things until a certain mileage or hours have been reached before they, as you hear people say, unleash everything. But that's all. Anymore, they can control what they want to have happen by the computer.
In some ways, that's a residual thought that you have to do something at 500 or 1,000 miles, because we used to, right? I mean, there was a time 30, 40 years ago where you drove it differently for the first 500.
Well,
back then it was right, and it was a non-synthetic oil to begin with, so you could change it at 300, 500 miles, and then you're putting the same oil back in it, so you're just keeping it clean, and that was a great idea.
If you talk to a professional engine rebuilder, they can give you some pretty strong opinions about how an engine should be broken in.
And this isn't, Stephen, thanks very much for the call. This isn't a knock on Stephen at all, because I think I see the situation here. Why do we get these questions And what I mean is, why does anybody who has a new car, who is supposed to drive their car the first 10,000 miles on the oil change or whatever, why are they calling us to, why
haven't they been well informed by the person they bought it from?
Are they excited and not listening? Now, in this case, I think Steven hasn't taken delivery of it yet. So he's anticipating the question.
Look, have you spent any time talking with a salesperson on a new car lately?
That's a good point.
So the
lot of words.
I'm just telling you, whether they're working or they're at the bar and you hear them talking to their buddy about, oh, well, I work over. Was it 2 weeks ago after the show? I was at a place that has local half-price pizza. Delicious. And there was a group, I'd call it a gaggle, definitely, of local car salesmen. 10 of them.
A gaggle.
They were watching the Canada-USA game. So that was 3 weeks ago, wasn't it? Anyways.
Yeah, I was traveling to... Yeah.
So they were over there. And they're like, it was obvious to me that one of them knew what he was talking about. And he wasn't saying a whole lot because he knew what he was talking about. The loud ones, they didn't know what they were talking about. They could sell you a car, and they were great at selling you a car. Real slick. Make you feel like, oh, that's a good idea. They were not doing the customers a great service, in my opinion, because they didn't know a lot. And I think you see that with many industries. People don't know. And if you're dealing with consumers that don't know themselves, all you have to do is be really convincing.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I would say, I think that the reason we get those phone calls, right away when you said it, my first thought was really similar to what Russ said, is that there's a perception that has been around that the salesman may not be as knowledgeable about the vehicle. And some dealerships do a great job of walking people back, introducing them to the service advisor, letting them know who they are, giving them a chance to say, have you got any questions? But typically in a sales situation, you don't want to open up any more questions than the consumer has.
I gotcha, yeah.
And
I don't want to talk to you. I want to get in my car and go. I've been here for an hour and 45 minutes.
You're excited too.
Yeah,
you're looking at that thing and you're like, whoa,
Let's go.
I want to drive this. I'm ready. I've made a commitment. Let's do this. But I do think that there's a perceived lack of trust over the years that make a lot of people ask questions otherwise.
And by over the years, 120.
Yeah.
Since car salesmen.
But I think Russ nailed it how he said that, because if you had a gaggle of them that are selling, and I got great friends that are great sellers, I got one of them that I know he can tell you every detail about that vehicle and what you should do, because he's an enthusiast about those vehicles. And I got another one that very good salesman.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Understands how to make you comfortable, does great follow-up, is going to check back in with you, make sure everything's okay. They'll guide you to the service department if you need to.
But he isn't saying you have to turn the thing to pull the
they eventually
floor mats out.
They eventually learn because they do enough of it. But there's a lot of turnover in the sales ranks. You have some that are established. They get their customer book established, and they do it for a long time. And they are really knowledgeable because they've just done it a long time.
Sure.
There's another group that is kind of in the middle, kind of like the Disney period. Remember when I went to Disney school? And then you got the bottom where they're cycling people through, trying to find the next one that can climb the ladder.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, you just never know. Chris, I got a great one for you on the long lines of that. If you took your Prius in to be, you had a very small leak. You said, hey, something was on the ground. Don't know if it's coolant or oil. It's just, but it's dripping right here. And only a couple drops a night, but I'm real picky about my car. I've owned it since it was brand new. I babied that thing. I want to make sure it's okay. I'm getting ready to go on a trip to Minneapolis with it. You are 4-hour drive. So I just want to check it. You took it to a dealership and said, here you go. Check for a leak. An hour later, you're in the waiting room saying, did they forget about me? My car's not here. So you go to the service counter and you say, Hey, I'm checking on my car. Oh, yeah. Oh, we got a little problem with it. We need you to come look at it. And they take you back and they start the car, and it's smoking so much out the tailpipe, it looks like it's on fire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could not see through the smoke. It's such a big cloud. And they say, yeah, it just failed. You're going to need a new turbo and you're going to need a new cat because it's failed. But you brought it in for an oil leak. Does that seem suspicious?
Sure.
Yeah, it would get you. I was going to ask you because I know Shannon would be like, well, it could happen. But you would be like, whoa, I just drove it in. What's going on? So we had this happen to a regular listener of ours just this week. We did put a cat on it and we put a turbo on it. Good as new again. But it just goes to show that things can happen. There's a little 1.4 Buick engine, same as the Cruise and everything. Encore, we see this happen a lot on these little small turbos where they fail suddenly. You're driving down the road and all of a sudden you look in your mirror and go, whoa, and there's a cloud behind you because the turbo seals blow out. The way you check is you pull the exhaust manifold off, which is part of the turbo. Our partner Dorman Products makes that whole turbo like we got for your Solstice. And you look at it. If it's dry in all the exhaust ports, the engine's not burning oil. If it's wet, you got to think, whoa, do we need to put an engine in this?
All the way through the system.
We're not going to spend the money on this turbo. But you pull it off, it's dry, but then you look at the bottom part where the exhaust comes out and it's dumping oil there, then you know the turbo failed. That's a good diagnostic. That's what happened to this car. So it's like, hey, you just happen to be at the right place at the right time for this to fail exactly then. You never know when it's going to happen. But I thought I'd pose that question to you because people, just like this oil change, you're like, when should I do it? What's the knowledge? They didn't feel comfortable with the story they got after this happened because they didn't feel comfortable with the person they were working with, because one of the responses from the person that they were working with that wasn't the mechanic was the service advisor was, well, I'm not a mechanic. How am I supposed to know? So those salespeople, when you're buying a car and you want to know about oil change, if you ever get that, say, I'd love to buy this vehicle. I've been dreaming about it. I've researched it. I really like it. Could you get me in touch with the person here that does know about it? Because I guarantee you, myself working at a dealership, when a cool car came in, I got to know all about it.
Yeah.
When that new BMW X3 came out, I had to know everything. Even though I was a BMW tech, I needed to know everything about that BMW because the Z3, I wanted, because I was like, this is cool. I might want to drive one of these and own it one day. And I wasn't going to own one of those.
I would be
Too much money.
My call would be, hey, I have a question. My car is leaking onto my garage floor. I don't know what it is, but can I get one of those rugs to put under it, or do I just use floor dry to clean it up? I don't know.
Kitty litter.
Yeah, I don't. What's leaking? I don't know, but it stinks. It's slippery. How do I get that off my garage? Do I just have to park it in the driveway?
I'm going to have to turn my page over.
I know, and I've ran out of room.
Full, and we have 3 more calls up on the screen. So it started off slow for about 10 minutes.
Storytelling period at the beginning.
But now we're in the 3rd hour of Under the Hood now.
Right. Well, and we're almost done with
So
the
those
3rd
of you who wanted 3 hours of Under the Hood, you're getting it right now.
Let's go to Oklahoma City.
I don't know if I did.
And talk to Forrest. You're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. Appreciate your call.
Thanks.
My question to you is, I've got a driveway full of Subarus. And the check engine light comes on every now and then with the mysterious P0300 for miscellaneous
random misfire,
which and so it amounts to carbon deposits on the backside of the intake valve, which I understand that, and I've been in the service industry for years, more years than what I want to admit, but when I was a Ford service manager, and I wondered, why in the world do they want to put oil separators on these things? Well, now I'm trying to I got it figured out that, there's some good in oil separators, but what do you recommend? I'd rather dissolve the carbon on the backside of the intake with chemically induced injection, maybe steam or something like that. I'd like to install a oil separator, but there's no room under the hood.
Right.
Do you have any thoughts, any feelings? And their response is, well, we take this wad of zip ties and apply it to the back of the intake valves, and thinking, gee, what if a piece of carbon gets stuck between the seat and the valve? Then what do you do?
Yeah.
And so my question to you is, I know you guys must have run into this from time to time. What's your recommendation?
Well, when they're that bad, without pulling them from the vehicle, you need to find a shop that still, if you were at Ford, you remember the old walnut blaster, and you'll need to find that. And they'll
I can't afford one.
No, I mean, you'll need to find somebody that can do this. You want to pull the intake and then have them blast the back of that, because that's the only safe way to get all that carbon removed into a fine enough powder where it's not going to cause a problem. Then they can vacuum it out of there. Once that's done, you will want to use a fuel system cleaning product. Berryman's got one. That's a good one you can use to put in through the intake while it's running, and that way that liquid hits the back of the valves, where normally it would just get in through the injectors, and then that'll finish cleaning that up. It'll kind of fine polish it, if you will, tune it down. But you're going to have to get it cleaned out that way. They're very difficult. Once that carbon hardens and the solvents are removed from it, which is the gasoline vapors and the oil vapors, you're not getting it off of there. And in fact, some of the new Fords, they have added a secondary injector to spray the back of the valves on the intake as it's running. And it's not so much the oil coming from the turbo, which a catch can, which you're talking about, would help with. It's the vapors that come up out of the cylinder when the engine's shut off and it's going through a hot soak. You shut it off, you've got unburned fuel vapor coming out through an open valve. It gets on the back of the valve and it sticks there like smoke damage in a house that's been on fire. You're not going to get rid of it, because that turbo, if it's working good, really shouldn't have a lot of oil in it. If you look in your air intake tube and it's dry and clean, no oil, it's 100% not coming from the turbo. It's coming from just air in there. So I see people put catch cans on some of these EcoBoost engines, and it's kind of a waste if their turbo is not putting out any oil. It's clean. There's nothing in the PCV system. So if it is, yes, that would help. But if it's not, no, it's not going to help. But cleaning it, the only thing, I've got one in my shop right now, and this is the problem. And I've told them the only way you're going to fix it is to pull the heads and have them cleaned, put up with it the way it is, or find a walnut blaster. And I couldn't find one in this area if I looked right now. I don't know where I would get one.
Forrest, thanks very much for the call. Good luck.
And I would throw in, just so I could say something on that call, that the best way to deal with it is to not let it get there in the first place if you can help it. And it's hard because, like I said, some of it's just innate the way they're designed, but using a high quality
year fuel system.
Using
cleaning.
a high quality fuel and a once a year fuel system cleaning.
And not the kind that just goes in the tank and cleans the injectors, but the kind that also is introduced through the intake system as well.
Our partner at BG44K has got a very good fuel injection system cleaner.
Yeah, they've got a two-part system. You run the 44K in the fuel tank, and then you run it through the air intake system as well. They've got a little bottle that you can get from them if you don't have your own, but you crack this thing open and you introduce it through the intake. It atomizes it as it's being vacuumed in there, and it will clean the back of those valves. It's very important on direct injected engines to clean these out, and BG has always had a great system for that. That's why they call it BG, Be Good to Your Car.
All right, last call. You ready?
Last call, number 22.
Last call. Let's go to Kansas City and talk to Judy. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Judy, what can we do for you?
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I have a 2013 1500 Sierra with a 5.3, and it's only two-wheel drive. And I ended up buying one of those things you plug into the OBD port to disable the DOD.
Okay.
And I got one. I thought they were supposed to be like $300, but I got them. Got this one on Amazon for like $35.
Sure.
It seems like it's working, but is that really going to help prolong the lifters?
Maybe. Maybe.
Maybe. There we go. What's a consensus?
Everything I researched, everything I researched, there's no definite yes or no, and
There-
I didn't know if you guys have ran into anyone who's actually used that, and it's
That
really
is
helped.
true. I have a vehicle with this. I don't have it turned off. I'm just waiting for it to fail, but I change the oil regularly, like every 2,000 miles.
And that has a lot of miles on it.
No.
No, which one are you talking about?
I'm talking about the Tahoe.
Is Michelle
That's
still?
only got 30,000 miles on it.
No, is Michelle still?
That's a
enabled?
DOD. Yeah. I haven't turned it off, but I keep the oil change. I change that oil every 2,000 miles, but like I said, 30,000 miles, I don't drive it very often. So it's like every 6 months it gets an oil change. The Camaro, that's still enabled. Well, that needs an oil change too. But that, I'm starting to get some top end rattle on it, and I don't know whether that's coming from the lifters starting to fail or not. I'm thinking maybe. I think it's time for a bigger cam and a louder exhaust. That'll fix that before it fails, because the metal in the system is bad. But the problem is so the lifters, they lock and unlock via oil pressure with some solenoids under the intake manifold. If the oil starts getting restricted because it's allowed to get too dirty, the unlocking and locking is delayed. And as it's delayed, if it's not fully engaged, it starts to wear an edge on the lock pins, and then they will fail and unlock, and you'll lose that lifter. And if the lifter is down and there's too much slack in the push rod, it can bend it. You can have all sorts of problems. So I feel personally that these engines, if you took the same engine and had the same person driving it equally every day, one that has a regular oil change has about the same opportunity to fail as the one that it was just disabled from day one. I think a lot of it has to do with just driving habits and things like that. Because like we said earlier on the show, back in hour 1, 2 hours ago, almost 3 hours ago, we talked about one of our customers in the shop right now with an 09 Yukon with a almost 500,000 miles on it, all original, not disabled, and it's still operating fine. We have a number of customers that have had zero failure, and they've got 250,000 miles on them. We've had other customers with 60,000 miles, and they've got a failure with them disabled. So I think it can go either way. And if you've got it disabled, you are just shutting it off electronically. If any of those solenoids start to leak a little bit, which happens on a solenoid transmission engine, oil pressure is going to start to build up. And when it builds up enough, it's going to unlock that lifter, and then it'll bleed down, but it's going to unlock it. You're going to have a temporary misfire, and it's going to start to wear that pin, and it's going to continue to do that. The only way to truly disable an AFM system is to change all the lifters, pull the intake manifold off, block off all these solenoids, or put a different lifter manifold in it, put it all back together with the non-AFM DOD system in order to make it work. And I've done that on a couple people that have bought remanufactured engines. They said, how much before you put this in to convert it to a non-AFM? And I think they were like $1,600 to do it the correct way. And then we also program it out, and then it's guaranteed it's not going to happen. But they were upset. They said, I'm spending $8,000 to put a motor in this baby. I want the rest of it to do it complete. Don't just turn it off. And then others just said, no, I'm good with turning it off. We'll spend a couple $100 and shut it down. It's up to them.
Does that help you out there, Judy? Not really, huh?
Yeah, it does. So, I do change the oil on it quite frequently because I don't like to put a lot of miles on it. But I have looked into doing the hard delete, and I was quoted around $2,000. So I was like, I'll just do this for now until I can do the hard delete, because that's my end goal. Is I really like to be able to do that.
And that's fair price for
a little better.
Completed. Our price, what we're talking about, is when the vehicle's out
on the bench,
on the ground, ready to go. So they're only getting you for a few $100 to tear that top end down, plus your parts and stuff. So that's pretty fair.
Judy, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. All right, that'll do it for the Under the Hood show and the after show. A lot of calls today.
I do have to throw something in here that got texted to me right after we finished the show.
Okay.
We didn't finish the show. It's just now.
Yeah. Well, right after we finished the live show.
I got you.
We went to just YouTube. From Ron, it's the 100th anniversary of Route 66 celebration is in May of 2026 in Kingman. Route 66 originally went Illinois to California, but for the most part, it dies now a bit west of Kingman. Road not kept up, etc. after Kingman.
Okay.
And so they're doing the 100th anniversary next year in Kingman is what I remember him sending me a text. I thought it was this year. I get a lot of information. I can't absorb it all, but some clarification on that, what we talked about during the show.
I've driven on Route 66 down in Arizona for a couple hours, and it ruined my life. I mean, I wanted
because it was so good. You want to keep going.
There is not much. I mean, that is just so perfect for me. The touristy stuff, the nostalgia, all of it is just. I love a gift shop. Any place with a gift shop is a place that seems like it's a fun place to be. And just the little time we spent on Route 66 was. As a matter of fact, I don't even think we did that long because we had a 30-hour drive ahead, so we were just kind of taking a little detour. So yeah, that sounds awesome, Ron. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah. All right, that'll do it. Thanks everybody. Like, subscribe, smash that button.
Yeah, that'd be great.